The Taliban says it's planning an inclusive caretaker government in Afghanistan after the group toppled the Western-backed administration in a stunning sweep earlier this month. Now we chat this afternoon to Gordon Duff, Veterans Today, who speaks to us live from the United States of America. Gordon, good day, greetings and welcome to the program on Radio Islam.
Well, it's good to be on Radio Islam again. I always
Thank you
enjoy.
for availing yourself. Gordon, US withdrawals from Afghanistan, was it a smart move by Biden?
It was 20 years too late, if anything. It was a move that had to be made. And it's like pulling a bandage off. You know, it's going to be messy, and, you know, there are 13 dead Americans and an awful lot more local people, 100 or more, that died from the ISIS bombing yesterday. But you know, I feel at this early point here to point out that you know, ISIS migrated from prisons in Hasaka in northern Syria and managed to get to Afghanistan somehow. The Iranians obviously didn't help them, and they didn't take a boat. They had to have flown. And the only people that could have helped them do that were NATO people, MI6, maybe Indian intelligence, the RAW, working with the CIA. But planting ISIS in Afghanistan is a CIA ploy, supposedly to offset the Taliban. Creating ISIS in Yemen was a CIA ploy to justify US involvement there. Creating ISIS in Syria was a US MI6 ploy. Things I don't believe in. I don't believe in ISIS. And I certainly don't believe that people can travel around the world without getting on planes. And in today's world, you don't get on the planes without help from a government. I have trouble getting on planes. You know, it's hard for me. Maybe I need to join ISIS. It'd be a lot easier for me to.
Yes. So is this the US proxy at play now, trying to ruin the feel-good vibes after Taliban takeover brought some peace to a war-torn nation?
Well, you know, one of the obvious things, and I was the first big debacle in Vietnam, I was involved in that one. And we were surprised that it took as long for the North Vietnamese and Viet Cong to beat the South. It took months of, and there was some fairly hard fighting. We always knew that Afghanistan's $1 trillion military, more money was spent on the military for Afghanistan than the entire Chinese military, including their Navy. We could have built for Afghanistan, we spent enough money on them to build them 20 aircraft carriers. They could have 1,000 F-35s and a space program. We should have sent the Afghan National Police Force to the moon. We spent enough money to do that. And of course, can you imagine being a soldier representing the US-backed Kabul government, being trained continually for 20 years, of being trained by American mercenary contractors, 20 years of being taught by ignorant hillbillies, teaching anybody in Afghanistan like they need to learn how to fight? These are the people who taught the world how to fight. You know, it's been a clown posse operation since day one, and we have to remember the history that supposedly 12 members of Al Qaeda were living in Afghanistan, being paid for by the Saudi government. That they were there as guests of Mullah Umar, supposedly. This is what we were told. And the U.S. had to go in, empower the Northern Alliance, the Uzbek and Tajik narcotics warlords, to take over the country, set up a police state, set up death camps, kill thousands of prisoners of war, set up a government that managed to turn Afghanistan into the world's largest narco state, the largest narco state anyone had ever imagined, to set up human trafficking on a massive scale, to turn women and children across Afghanistan into prostitutes, and to unleash in that country foreign intelligence agencies, where India ran a section of the country for their covert war against Pakistan, where the Israelis and MI6 used Afghanistan to war on Iran, and where the US, of course, used Afghanistan to dump massive amounts of heroin, truckload after truckload, into the former Soviet republics of the Caspian Basin. And in the process, Western politicians owned businesses. When they left office, they were given massive mercenary contracts. One well-known member of Congress owned dry cleaning plants throughout Afghanistan, enough dry cleaning plants to have cleaned the robes of the Saudi royal family for 1,000 years. Those dry cleaning plants turned out one thing: processed heroin by the ton, enough to supply the world, enough to make heroin so cheap that school children here in the United States can afford to buy it. And they do, millions of them. Small children. Heroin is sold everywhere in the US now. And getting out of Afghanistan, was it time to do it? Oh, it was time. But now, after the attack, it's going to be a continued drone war by the United States. And as that drone war continues, that drone war, no matter who's running it, Biden or Trump or anyone, that drone war is going to kill lots and lots of civilians. It's still going to kill civilians because the United States is just not very good at gaining intelligence or hiring anyone but criminal sociopaths as drone pilots.
Yes. So, that is how we can analyze what has transpired. When one of the issues or one of the focal points in the Western media's focus of Afghanistan in the days after the takeover by Taliban was on the airport. And yesterday, we had Mullah Zaif, who is the former foreign minister of Taliban to Pakistan. We had him on air, and he said that the Afghans were receiving fake messages saying that the US will give them a visa and a new life in overseas, and that is why they kept flocking to the Kabul airport. What do you make of the groups of people heading towards the Kabul airport?
Well, it's now easy to handle people through social media. I was in Nigeria, staying in Abuja some years ago. I was there for a presidential inauguration, and got out of my hotel and was driving into the government compound, and I saw a young man sleeping in a culvert in a ditch in the side of the road, and he had absolutely nothing except he had an iPhone. And I watched him picking up his messages. He slept in a culvert. The use of the internet has empowered criminal organizations, and calling intelligence agencies anything other than criminal organizations is insanity. All they do is commit crimes. It's part of anything that requires secrecy is there to hide criminality. And all of them do this. And it isn't just the American agencies. They're all criminal organizations. They all work together quite well. Even the ones that are supposedly enemies are not enemies. They all have one client, world organized crime. And I think people are beginning to see this. And coordinating their efforts for them is Google Corporation, along with Facebook. Google is the worst of all. Google profiles everyone in the world, including that kid I've talked about that slept in that ditch at Abuja. There's a Google profile on him, of what it takes to send him to the airport or make him throw a firebomb. And they make sure that every one of us gets the emails and messages and search results necessary to keep us as off balance, crazy, prejudiced, stressed as possible, to make us compliant as possible. And we wonder who the boss is. Is Google aiding the intelligence agency? It was certainly formed by the CIA, funded initially by the CIA, or is Google all of the intelligence agencies in the world now? Does it run all of them? The massive amount of information they've got, certainly sitting on decades of every search I've made, every email I've written, they've read. I can't look at anything online without being swamped with ads for whatever it is in a second. With the ability that computers have and the rudimentary, maybe not so rudimentary AIs, artificial intelligence, profiling us, every one of us, and feeding the information necessary to control us, to move the last vestiges of freedom, if we are stupid enough to watch the news, to pick up that device, that phone, that laptop, that iPad, and look at that screen. Yeah, I expect to be sent to the airport and expect to be blown up. And if these people were blown up, was Google Corporation part of it? Probably. Will billions of dollars be made based on this terrorist attack? Oh, yes. Who's going to make the money? Raytheon Corporation is going to make tons. Lockheed is going to make tons. That attack, 13 Marines dead, which is what we worry about. 100 other people, which Americans are told not to worry about because they're not ours. But
Yes.
their death is going to turn out huge amounts of funding for American corporations. Every disaster has got a profitable side, and then you wonder in every single one who really staged it. And when you're seeing information, as you pointed out, flowing through the internet, feeding people into that terror attack. And there are adequate controls in the internet that could have stopped this, that could have identified it. That's why intelligence agencies are supposed to exist, to identify it and identify the terror threat and see that the attack was coming and to do something, if possible, to mitigate it. Although I couldn't see how that could easily have been done. But was there an effort to do that? I wonder. I would like to know.
Yes. Yeah, those are the questions that we certainly need to ask. We always appreciate your time on Radio Islam, Gordon. It's always such a pleasure to get your commentary into your thoughts, which obviously gives us the true perspective on things. Thank you for always availing yourself.
It's always great, and I love Radio Islam.
Thank you. Go well. We love chatting to you, and we look forward to chatting again in the future. Bye-bye. That was Gordon Duff, our guest, joining us from the United States of America. As he said, that ISIS is a proxy of the US, and because of that, how did these ISIS members reach Afghanistan? It's certainly with the help of the CIA.
Africa Muslims Agent.
Thank you very much, Gordon.
You're welcome.
Take care. We'll speak again. Thank you. Bye.
South Africans live